Hello, and welcome to the Healthy is Happy podcast, the show that helps you get back to the basics of healthy and happy living. We're your hosts. I'm Nellie Ward.
And I'm Jennifer Maha. This podcast is the passion project of two friends who believe that healthy living is happy living. Always look for the good in others, never stop believing in the power of positivity, and think a little hard work goes a long way. To us, healthy living is simply a commitment to making daily choices that keep us on a healthy trajectory, both physically and mentally. We believe it's a lifelong journey, not a destination, and we like to be your co-host along this journey. Buckle up and stay hydrated. It's going to be an epic adventure. All right, everyone, and welcome to another great episode of the Healthy is Happy podcast. I am Jennifer.
I'm Nellie.
And today we are going to talk to you about stretching. When we were talking, I guess yesterday, about what we wanted to talk about on the podcast this week, we realized that we've mentioned stretching in yoga and meditation in a few other podcasts, and I think most people understand the importance of stretching. I also think, just like flossing, we don't do it, right? Like
Flossing. Oh.
Not the dance. Actual like dental flossing. Like when you go to the dentist and they remind you how important it is, and we all lie and say, I floss 3 times a day. It's the same thing with stretching. We understand how important it is, and we often lie to our coaches about whether or not we do it. So we thought we'd spend some time going over, the different types of stretching and why it is so important, and give some tips on just when and how to implement it into your daily regimen, right?
Yeah. So I think to start off, we just want to give a little bit of back. Well, first and foremost, we are going to talk about stretching and the importance of stretching. But if you have an acute or serious injury that's been existing for a while, or you have any physical limitations from preventing you to stretch, talk to a doctor or a physical therapist.
Yeah, don't talk to Jennifer.
This is not us trying to take place. If you shouldn't be doing it, don't do it. If you are in a good bill of health, and stretching is super important. All right.
Correct. Both for people who are active, for people who are not as active, and everyone in between.
Yep. So to start, there's 2 different types of stretches we're going to talk about.
Yep.
Static stretching and dynamic stretching. Static stretching is when you're stretching and you're holding the same position for about anywhere from 10 to 30 seconds.
Yeah. So this is like your forward folds, right? They used to do in like PE
touch your
class.
toes. Yeah. Their quad stretches, anything that you're standing still while doing and holding that position for 10 to 30 seconds. Dynamic stretching is stretching while moving. So these are like your high knees, your A skips, your B skips, butt kicks, anything that gets the muscles stretched out
while you're in motion. Yeah.
Dynamic stretching is for exercisers. That's super important to do before exercise. Static stretching you can do before exercise, but it's important to do after exercise.
Yeah.
So if you're going to start stretching before and after exercise, do your dynamic warm-ups before, your static stretches after.
Right. And I would say, like, what is the good time frame? If you're going to say, I'm going to go for a 30-minute run or a 30-minute walk, like how long should I prep to do my stretches ahead of time? Like how long should this take me?
I mean,
if I'm
stretches,
doing it effectively.
If you're doing them effectively, if you have a big hard workout, I would spend, anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes stretching before. If you're going for a 30-minute jog, just 2 to 3 minutes does the trick. Just getting those muscles loose.
Right. And what that does, right, is it warms up your muscles.
It's preparing your muscles.
It looses them, and it prepares them to move.
Yep.
Which I think that brings us to another point is last summer, Nellie and I did a lot of research with athletes and talking to athletes about just what are their regimens, how they work out, like a lot of different things. And something that came up that really stood out to me, we were going over a baseball player who played in the minor leagues. We were going over his daily workouts. Mm-hmm. And on his sheet of paper, what we would often refer to as stretching or warm-ups, his was referred to as ready-to-play exercises. Mm-hmm. And so I, asked him a couple of questions about that. And it made so much sense because most athletes and adults and just anyone really, stretching just does not sound fun. Most people don't like to do it, which is why we skip it. But his organization that he played baseball in had reframed that from stretching to ready-to-play exercises.
Yeah.
So in order to be able to go to practice or to play in a game, you had to complete your ready-to-play exercises, which I thought was actually pretty strategically intelligent.
Yeah, so coaches out there listening, that might be something you want to implement.
Right, is instead of calling it stretching, maybe just switch the thinking on that and call it like, we're going to do our ready-to-play exercises, right? Because it sounds more important than instead of like, oh, stretching.
Yeah.
That mindset, I think, would help because it is critical that you do it and you do it for the right amount of time and you do it with proper form.
Yeah. So if you think of your muscles, think of them as like a rubber band. So when you're exercising, you're pulling that rubber band, and you're really working those muscles. But if you don't warm up that rubber band, there's a higher chance that rubber band's just going to pop.
Yeah.
All right. So that's how that works for the before exercises. So just kind of, if you're thinking of a rubber band, just, stretching it out a few times before you just start yanking it. Our muscles do the same things for exercising. After exercising, it's the same thing. You've stretched out these muscles and you go from working to no activity. So you're more of a standing still, your muscles tighten up. So the rubber band tightens back up. So really doing those static stretches after reduces your risk of getting an injury because you're keeping them flexible and moving and just not so much of this, all
hard
effort
stop.
back to stop. Yeah.
I know it's also important to do cool downs. So like if you're working out, I know a lot of times when I was doing a lot of running, especially hard runs, there was always a cool down after, right?
Yeah.
So where you're still moving and you're slowing yourself down, both your heart rate for cardio conditions, but that also applies to your muscles, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's like anytime you do a workout or any sort of exercise, like take a cool down lap around the track, around the field, whatever it is. And that's just, again, taking those muscles that have been extremely stretched out and slowly returning them to normal before you go and do your stretches. It's just a nice implementable phase that, again, reduces the risk of injury and gets your muscles ready for that resting phase that's coming.
Yeah, when I coached cross country, after cross country meet, they finished their 3-mile race, and I would always, within 10 to 20 minutes of them finishing, I would make them all go for a 2-mile, just easy jog. And the kids who did that religiously versus the ones who kind of skipped it or did it for ran for 3 minutes or whatever were the ones that were less likely to get injured in the season.
And you recover faster.
Yep.
So I think now we're going to move into like, why is it important, right? So Nellie,
some
again,
steps.
Huh?
Just some steps, nine steps. Things.
So Nellie is the research department for our podcast.
I'm good at lists. Maha's good at conversation.
Yeah. So we divide and conquer, right? Using our skills and our strengths and just strengths. These are just strengths. There's no weaknesses here. So Nellie put together a list of like 9, like why stretching is important. So our first thing that is important is it does truly increase your flexibility, right?
Yes, it does. So it's increasing, being able to move your joints, thoroughly and have the full range of motion gives you more freedom of movement. So you're not so restricted when you're performing exercises.
Yeah.
So it just increases that increase in flexibility.
And it increases like blood flow to your muscles and all that good stuff too.
And it reduces any risk of, limited mobility issues as you get older too. So not even so much for athletes as much as it's just people who are aging and getting older. The more you stretch and increase your flexibility, the more mobility you'll have throughout your life.
Your life, right? So I think a lot of what we're going to talk about is kind of couched within the idea of being physically active, whether you're a youth athlete, whether you're a weekend warrior, whether you just like go on daily walks or whatever. But in general, like even for people who don't live active lives, like stretching can still be an activity that is very good for you. In general, like you were saying, because it keeps your muscles loose, it prevents injury, it increases blood flow. It does a ton of things for your overall health as well as your mental health. So I think that is very important.
Well, and number 2 we have there is increase, range of motion, which is similar to the flexibility, but it's just being able to do everyday activities with more ease is really what's going to happen. Even this is not saying that I'm not talking about your college level athlete. I'm talking about just anyone in their everyday life, like having more range of motion and being able to move your joints like they're supposed to move and keeping up with that as you age. You're going to have more ease with everyday activities,
and you'll be more comfortable. Like things won't start to hurt as often. But flipping that back to people who are active and athletes, like a lot of athletes as they get older, like like middle school to high school, especially boys, I think they do not value stretching because it sounds nerdy. Girls, I think, are more into stretching because it just seems more relevant to them, and they often do yoga and PE classes and things like that. But boys typically skip that. But it does drastically increase and improve your range of motion, which as an athlete, the more mobility you have, the more range of motion you have, the more power you have, right? In any sort of sport that you're playing. And I think it's just good to sort of stress that point is like, while you're working on speed and you're building power and you're getting stronger and you're jumping higher, like making sure that you, after you do all of that exercising and working out and practicing, that you go back and stretch so that you do not lose range of motion. Because it's often you can, as you bulk up and get more muscles, you can lose range of motion within that formation.
Yeah. True story.
True story, right?
True story.
And hip mobility is a big one, right? A lot of athletes forget how important it is to stretch, like your hip flexors, your inner thighs, those types of things, which pull everything down to the center, which greatly decreases your range of motion, right?
Oh,
so
yes.
doing those stretches are critical to expanding back open that range of motion,
Yep.
which makes you more athletic in general. Our third tip here is to improve your performance in all physical activity.
Yeah. So it's not really a tip, I guess, as much as
Just why. It's just a why.
Yeah. No, it increases. So especially the dynamic stretches for athletes, for performance beforehand, if you're before a game, anything like that. If you do those dynamic stretches and you really get those muscles stretched out, there have been tons of studies that show like athletes that thoroughly do dynamic stretches, which we'll do a blog post and I'll put in dynamic stretches in there.
Yeah.
So people can reference them. But those who actually do their dynamic stretches perform better in any athletic event versus not. So just when you do your dynamic stretches, it stretches out the muscles, it gets that blood flowing. It's just something that is critical to performance.
And those things are scientifically related, right? And I think, again, if you're dealing with like younger, I don't know really anybody, because I know I don't love stretching. I do it, but it's not like looking forward to it. But I know when I do, I run better. I ride my bike. Everything I do,
I look forward to stretching when I'm hurting, which is like, it's too late.
It's too late. You've already.
But I'm like, this feels so good now.
Yeah. And sometimes I don't admit when things hurt because then that's admitting that I haven't been stretching and I know better.
Yeah. We all know better. But
I'll also say, though, for anyone who's listening who does have younger athletes, like high school, middle school kids, is just maybe talking to them about the importance of stretching as it relates to performance, but doing the stretches right? Because like Nellie and I have coached lots of youth sports and done a lot of training with youth sports. And say we had 12 kids, right? 4 of them are doing their dynamic stretches the right way. 2 of them or 3 of them are doing dynamic-ish stretches. And then like 4 of them are just like walking back and forth, like hoping we don't point it out that they're not doing it right. And it's one of those things where like maybe instilling in them like the benefits of it, like why you do it, and like it's important to do it the right way, as opposed to like fussing at them because they're not doing it. It's like, well, if you don't do it the right way, you're going to get injured. You're not going to perform as well, right? So let's start over and get these Frankensteins the right way.
And there is a flip that triggers in kids, after that middle school age, when they get to high school and they start taking their sports careers a little bit more seriously. They kind of, stretching isn't become so much as a joke as it once was. But
and I think everyone
teaching
knows
them young, teaching them young how to do it correctly and have the right form when they're doing it is super important.
Yeah, and then making sure that they're an advocate for their own bodies, in the sense that oftentimes coaches who aren't, full-time coaches, right, who are hobby coaches, they don't value stretching because it's taking away from practice time. But like if you have kids that play sports, or teaching them, hey coach, like, do you mind if we get here 5 minutes early and we do some warm-ups and some stretches, because that will definitely decrease their chance of injury, increase their flexibility and mobility.
Yep. All right, our fourth thing is that it increases blood flow.
Yeah, that's important for everything.
Yeah, so anyone that regularly stretches your circulation, it actually improves your circulation and just keeps it, going in a cycle, like anything maintenance. So maintaining stretches, you're maintaining that blood flow, and that actually when the blood is flowing to your muscles at a better rate, you reduce the amount of recovery that you need after a workout, after a long walk, after anything like that. No matter what your physical abilities are, if you do the stretches before and after, your recovery time is less.
Yeah, and you're delivering all that oxygen to your muscles, which is super important. That's what blood flow is doing, why it is so important
and
to
that
recovery.
The oxygen that goes to those muscles is what reduces soreness. So you're actually setting yourself up to be less sore after performing these, anything that is strenuous.
And I think just piggybacking off of that a little bit, a lot of times if you do a hard workout, or you have a race or a big athletic event where you are sore the next day, or your kid is sore the next day, the easiest way to start recovery is to go for a walk, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because again, that is loosening your muscles. It's a form of dynamic stretching. It's increasing your blood flow, and you're going to recover. Most people think, oh, I'm sore, like I'm just going to lay here, but that's the worst thing that you can do. I know the first time I ever ran a marathon with a coach, the next day I was like, oh, I'm sore. I just want to lay in my bed. And he texted me and was like, that walk I put on your schedule, you have to go do it. And it was like a 3-mile easy walk, and it was actually very enjoyable. But like once I finished walking, I wasn't sore anymore. And so it was,
and that goes for people who even are starting exercise. Even if you go for a super long walk and you are sore the next day, just standing up and being on your feet to make that blood flow will help.
It helps. Yeah, it helps reduce soreness and improve recovery a lot faster.
For sure.
Our next why do we want to stretch is it improves your posture, which we all know is very important.
Yes, it improves that posture. as the combination, especially of strength and
Strength. It's core strength, back strength.
core and back strength. The combination of strength and stretching is really what's going to, engage those muscles and help you with your posture so that you can reduce any, musculoskeletal related, risk as you do age. So encouraging that like proper, alignment of your shoulders back, standing tall and stretching and, doing strength training, which strength training is super important. All of that helps with your posture.
And I will say Nellie wrote yoga on the board. Yoga is a great way to do all of this, but it very much improves posture because yoga is like, it is a form of stretching, but it also builds like stabilizes your muscles, especially your core, to be able to hold some of those poses, which is developing your core, which also drastically improves your posture.
Yes.
And I think most people don't often think about our posture until it's too late and we are like, slumped over a little, or our shoulders always curve in. Which then might relate to actual injuries and a lot of pain later. So working on your posture, if you stretch, you kind of open yourself back up again, right?
Absolutely.
Which could definitely go back to our confidence talk, right? The bigger you are, the more confidence you
True
have.
story.
It all goes back. Just start with posture, people. Stretching leads to good posture.
Stretching leads to good posture.
And if you're not watching this on YouTube and you're just listening, Nellie and I both sat up very straight.
I know we did.
While we talked about this and like threw our shoulders back.
I know. Golly, I have like that computer posture where my...
Yeah, I think most people do, right? Because we work on laptops more so than even I think larger computers now. So we tend to like lean into our laptops and desktops and mobile devices and stuff. And so it is great. Like take a 10-minute stretch break every
like
2
that.
hours.
Who's that character on the Minions movie that has like the back like that?
Gru, like the main character?
The tall guy?
Yeah, Gru.
He grew.
Yeah. You're like curl in, but you want to curl out, right?
Yeah.
So you can just stretch yourself back into a regular posture. But work, I think, tends to give us bad posture because most of us sit a lot at work.
Yeah, so focus on your posture.
And stretch.
Sorry, my microphone.
Mic check.
Mic check. Okay.
Our 7th reason of why we want to stretch is to help, what does that say? Heal and prevent back pain.
Okay, so this is talking to the general public. Athletes mostly know when something's tight and they feel it and they know what they need to stretch. But for people who are not athletes or who are new to exercise or who just,
Starting getting active.
are sore and their backs hurt, a lot of times the first place that you'll feel this, what's tight, is coming from your back because everything is, just like she was talking about our hips earlier, the hips, the top of the hips and the back all kind of connect. So people who have lower back pain, anything like that, it's usually because they're so tight that everything is yanking against that lower back.
Yeah.
So stretching really could help prevent back pain and heal the pain that people have in there. Granted, there are lots of reasons for back pain, but stretching, and if it's a new thing, if it's acute, it's usually because you have super tight hips. I know I went through a chronic point in time where I thought I was going to have to give up running because my lower back hurt so bad, and it was that my glutes were so tight that every time I ran, it just yanked on my lower back.
Yeah. And going with this preventative aspect, stretching is also not something that you can do like once a week and check the box like, oh yeah, I stretched. It's a daily thing.
Yeah.
It's definitely a daily thing. And I would highly recommend, if you're physically active, that you stretch twice a day. Like, before and after exercise, definitely. But like stretching first thing in the morning, like give yourself 5 minutes.
While you're watching TV.
And stretch before you go to bed. 5 minutes before you go to bed. It's going to make you feel tremendously better, especially as you get older.
Yeah, I mean, we naturally want to stretch when we wake up. You know how everyone gets out of bed and starts stretching. So, like, that's our body telling us
like,
to,
well, look at cats and dogs. That's what they do as soon as they wake up, they got to stretch.
I know. Ted does it. He's so cute. I want to have a Ted on the podcast one day.
We could do that. We have a dog day.
Yeah. He goes,
down dog.
So cute. So cute. I wonder if that's how they call it, down dog. Oh my gosh, that is.
Yeah. That's 100% why.
Yeah.
Up dog, down dog, that's 100% where it comes from.
It should be up cat though, because the dogs really do that. I think that's cats.
No, they have a cat cow pose, which is also from the cats who stretch their backs like that. Yeah.
And oh my gosh. Okay. Funny. I never put that together.
All right. Moving right along. Like we talked about like last week, I think we've mentioned
child's pose too. Like that is like a baby.
Yeah, well, there's child's pose and then there's happy baby. Those are two separate yoga poses, but they get their names from the, baby.
I never made that connection.
Yeah.
Okay.
Stretching can also be a great for stress relief. We talked about this in several previous episodes tied into other topics. But when you are stressed, and sometimes your body is stressed, but your mind isn't, right? If you're like overworking it and stuff like that. And so it's a great reliever of both types of stress, mental stress, emotional stress, physical stress. It helps for all of those things.
Yeah, well, and muscles tighten from
When you're
emotional
stressed.
and
when you're stressed, you
physical
tend to
stress.
like squeeze your shoulders and your neck. All of this gets really tight. Especially if it's work-related stress. Again, you're like leaning over a laptop or a desk and you're just holding everything in and you're not breathing, so you're not getting good oxygen. You're tensing all of your muscles because you're stressed. So stretching will relieve all of that.
Yeah, and all of the stress that comes from, emotional stress and anything like that, you usually hold in your shoulders and your neck and your upper back. So like stretching those areas and just, when you are stressed, just focusing on breathing and standing up tall and getting that blood flowing.
Yeah. And sometimes just some shoulder rolls helps, right? Like roll your shoulders like 10 times backwards, 10 times forwards, and then like rotate your neck around. Will just start the process of relieving that stress.
Absolutely.
And then there's sometimes, I know in physical activity, people tend to overstress their muscles. Like I am a very nervous bike rider, right? So I know that when I ride my bike, especially if I'm riding it like down a hill, definitely, but like at high speeds or anything where I'm like, I get nervous. And so like, I'll find that when we used to do a lot of triathlon training, I would be so tense riding my bike, right? I'm in aero position, like squeezing my hands and elbows and neck as tight as I possibly could, which led to a lot of unnecessary pain. And so the longer we rode bikes, I would try to remind myself to take a breath and like release my neck and shoulders. And the more we ride, I would tense it back up again. Yeah. I would try to remind myself to do that. And I think there's probably a lot of people who do some sort of athletic sport, triathlon, running, biking, even playing sports, where you do tense up, right? And just remember, like, play relaxed or ride relaxed or run relaxed. Even when running, I do a lot of runs with the Peloton app, and that they'll always remind you in the middle of like a hard session, don't forget to relax your shoulders. And like, sure enough, my shoulders are up near my earlobes, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, better.
You running with this?
I think everybody does it. You start running and you start thinking you like to tense yourself up, and then when they say that, you're like, yeah, my shoulders should definitely be way, and my arms should be down here, and my neck should be back. But I'm like turning into Gru as I run. Back to the Minions. All right, Nellie. So what is number 8 on our list of why stretching is critical and important?
Okay, so number 8 is it can calm your mind. So especially with static stretching, when you're static stretching, you are holding your stretches and you're there for 10 to 30 seconds, but you're focused on what you're doing in that moment. You're focused on that stretch. So it really kind of gives you a mental break from everything else that's going on in your life.
Yeah.
Kind of like tricks your brain, because you have to be static stretching. You have to be thinking while you're stretching about what you're doing. So you can't really think about too much else.
Well, and when you're doing that, especially if you're using it for, this reason here of calming your mind, is to focus on your breathing, right? So like, try to breathe in for 2 breaths and then breathe out for 2, right? So if you're going to stretch for 12 seconds, right? Like do 2 in breaths, hold it and release for 2. That way you're working both your breathing and your stretching, and your mind, like you said, is focusing on breathing, counting, and stretching. So whatever it is you're stressed about, you don't really have space for that in your mental place.
Exactly. It's like a mind trick.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, back to like sports in general, a lot of times that's when you're coaching younger sports, like youth sports, even high school sports, like kids are, you're ready to play, you're ready to practice, you're ready to do something. So having them try to be calm and do their stretches effectively, like they just want to chit chat, right? So it's maybe helpful if you do the counting. I know Nellie has
I do count every other
one. So everyone, like Nellie will say 1, everyone else says 2, and you kind of go back and forth.
I'm going to show them 1,
2,
3,
4,
5.
Okay, all the way to 12. But doing that, the kids can't, like, you're discouraging them from chit-chatting and you're, encouraging them to actually focus on counting and doing their stretches appropriately all the way for the right amount of time. And it does help if a coach leads it, because left to their own devices, kids can get to 12 in about 4 seconds.
Yeah. And so
it's like 12 seconds, not 12 count.
Yeah,
not a 12 count.
Our 12 count usually is about 20 seconds, but like, so and for coaches out there, it reduces stretching time. I don't know. I implemented this for athletes as like for their mind and making sure they're in their stretch long enough. But it really cuts back on the jib jab and the gossiping and that's kind of
distractions.
It's distractions, and that's also the time when, if there's going to be bullying, it's usually around those moments when kids are altogether and they're not doing something super
Or just
physically
misbehaving,
active.
just general
So
misbehaving.
it just eliminates all of that, So I really, yeah, counting is great.
Counting's always good. And explaining to them again, just reiterating like the why of it, right? And I know again, as adults, we don't like to stretch, but every time I remember why I'm doing this, it's so that I can continue to be athletic and active as I get older. It's like, yeah, that's totally like getting 5 extra years of running in my lifespan, which hopefully might be a long lifespan, is important to me, right?
Yes.
So like I'm going to take the time to stretch and do it right, so that I don't shortchange myself on opportunities.
Yep. And then the last thing I put up on here, I actually thought about when I was driving, because I just recently was reading a new nutrition study that came out, and like we are in a time period where there are more chronic headaches than have ever been before, and that
makes
has a huge combination of things to do with sleep, diet, exercise,
All the things.
But stretching is huge for that too, because stretching, just like we said, where you hold stress and where you hold tension is in your neck, your back, and your upper shoulders. So just stretching and keeping blood flowing, keeping those muscles loose, you're really going to cause less tension. You can cause less tension coming from your head. So that stretching combined with proper diet and exercise and proper hydration and sleep, that you really could decrease your chances of getting these chronic headaches.
Bad headaches, yeah. So now we're going to just talk about like our favorite stretches. Nellie doesn't know we're going to talk about this. I just made this
Pigeon.
up. But we're going to talk about, what are your favorite, like, if you have like 5 stretches you would either recommend based off of, your lifestyle, like running, or just ones that you enjoy doing. Like, what would these stretches be?
Okay, mine would be the pigeon.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll put all of these in a blog post with a little graphic
Yeah,
so
we can
people
do
can
that.
see. Yeah, we can do that this week.
Yeah.
So that will be out before this podcast drops. So check it
Yeah.
out on our blog page.
Yeah.
Mine would be the pigeon pose.
Yeah.
Okay, what's your favorite? Go back and forth.
I don't know. That's a hard one.
You asked the question.
No, I know. I asked you to list 5 so that
Okay,
I could
okay.
also, while you're listing your 5, I really do like just kind of the traditional like down dog pose and up dog pose, like going back and forth, like flowing through those, because I think it kind of like, it's funny. I guess the older I get, when I do that a lot. If I do yoga, I typically do it in the morning. And you can hear things like creaking and cracking and like getting like into place for the day. And I feel way better after I do that. So it's more of a dynamic stretch than like a static stretch, but it's like flowing through those 2 poses. I feel like, and then like pedaling your feet out. So it's more of a dynamic movement, but I really do like that. I also fully respect the pigeon pose.
Oh my gosh.
As
the
a
pigeon
runner,
pose.
it's kind of critical.
Well, and like those of you who know me, like, or if you don't know me and you're listening, like I am super short and I'm not super short. I take super short strides. I need to clarify that.
I would say, yeah.
I'm not super short. I take
You're
super
just
short
short,
strides.
not super short.
I'm tall. I take super short strides, so my glutes are always and hips are always so tight.
Like to be on, like Nellie and I went to Disney World for a work conference, and I was so confused as why her Garmin said she had taken like 5,000 more steps than me than we had like been side by side all day. So at this point, we were somewhere in Disney World, and I was
for the National Strength and Conditioning Conference.
I decided to walk behind Nellie, and I'm good at mimicking people, and I was mimicking her walk, and I was like, now I wonder why it takes you 7 steps to go like one of my steps, and I don't take long steps.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, this is exhausting.
I know.
Walking like this.
It really hurts my hip. My hips are so tight.
But a pigeon pose is a great pose. It's a great hip opening pose. I would also say it's great for anyone that's physically active, like running, biking, any of that stuff, because you often don't think about your hips and all like the sort of the outside of your upper thighs, your
piriformis, yeah.
all that stuff. It's an amazing stretch for that. Okay, so that's stretch number 1 and 2.
My
one and
second
one. What's your
favorite
second
is
stretch?
butterfly.
The butterfly stretch. Okay, you want to like give us a verbal like
So you
explanation of this.
basically put your legs feet together.
Yeah.
And like you make like a butterfly wings.
Yeah.
And you butterfly, but I can get my knees all the way to the ground and then lay down, and oh my gosh, does that feel good.
And that stretches your inner thighs, right?
Yep.
Which
inner thighs and the back, your lower back.
Yeah, it stretches both. And I think your inner thighs, most people don't stretch that enough. And we don't realize how tight that gets, because when your inner thighs get tight, it hurts everywhere. Really.
Yes.
Butterfly stretch, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. My second favorite pose is runner's pose, right?
Oh, runner's lunge?
lunge.
Girl.
I love doing that pose. And like typically, you start with like in a runner's like almost a starting stance, like in a track, like in a block like that. But doing it appropriately where your head is lifted up. And then I like to like lift your hands up so that you're also stretching like your hip flexors really deep into there. I really like that stretch a lot.
That's a good one.
It's a really good one. Yeah.
What's the one called where I'm drawing a blank, but like if you're laying on your back and you do this.
Figure four.
Figure four.
That's basically inverted pigeon. So like
pigeon and figure four.
It stretches the same thing. There's just different ways to do it. I think most people prefer the seat. You can do it seated or laying down. Because pigeon is like your hips have to really be
like you have to be very lined up. Yeah. You have to have like core strength.
So like if you're starting to stretch your outer hips there, I would start with the figure four. Okay,
figure four is my third.
And then
favorite.
move into pigeon pose.
I think I actually like figure four better than butterfly, but
yeah. Okay, so now it's my turn for like the third stretch. I've heard this called different things, but one of them is called a tripod stretch. So you put your legs like you stand up and you spread your legs out far apart, but not super far. And you put both hands on the ground and you lower your head down, and then you inhale and you bring like your right arm up and you twist your whole body up and you leave your left hand in the center, right? Like like a tripod. And then you like exhale and bring your hand down.
That's
and you do
usually
the other
I've never
side.
heard it called a tripod, but that makes a lot of sense.
And again, it's kind of both a static and dynamic because you want to like do it in a dynamic way and then hold it statically for a few seconds and breathe. And then come back, but it opens up your hip and your shoulders and your back, and it sort of starts to rotate your core.
Yeah.
But if my back hurts, which mine usually hurts in my shoulder area at the top, I like doing that pose quite a lot.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
That's a really good one.
Yeah, I might do that after this podcast.
I know. I'm like,
I've been teaching for 4 hours.
My lower
and now
back
I'm
is starting
just
to hurt. Like, my fourth is the one whenever it's usually at the end of like a yoga class or cool down, but you're like in child's pose and you put your arm through.
Oh yeah, and you stretch your shoulders. That's a great shoulder.
What is
stretch.
that called?
For the life of me, I cannot remember.
But so basically, you're in
Tabletop.
baby downward dog. I mean,
you're usually in a tabletop position, and then you take
go into child's pose, though, like the
but you take your right arm
and you just stick it
under your left armpit, and then you kind of rotate over on your shoulder, and you can stay like that. But you often want to sit back and like child's pose and just stretch your shoulders out. That's a great shoulder stretching pose.
So good.
Okay, another pose that I like. Well, this doesn't have a name really. I don't think there's a name for it. It's just like leg stretches, but something that I do a lot when my like piriformis gets tight is I'll take a belt or like a long sock and just lay on my back and hold my foot up and do one foot at a time. So you stretch like your left leg, like hamstring, calf, and then so if you're stretching your left leg, you take that rope into your right hand and you pull your leg across your body. And so it stretches all your toes up in your foot.
That feels so good.
That whole
just
left
thinking about
side.
it.
And then you do the same thing, but you pull it to the left. So now you're stretching the whole inner side of your leg and do both legs.
I do that with my bands.
That's a band, any of that stuff. Like that's a phenomenal stretch. And if I were to do that daily, I would be a much better runner. But I don't.
Yeah.
I'm being honest here. I don't.
Yeah.
Okay. Got one more. I think I got one more. One more.
One
more good stretch that you just love. Makes you happy. I have two more.
Can I have one of yours?
No.
Okay, well, let me think.
Okay, the last one is going to be both of ours. You'll agree when I say what it is.
Okay, what is it?
Okay,
what's your fifth one?
No, it's your fifth one.
Well, my fifth one's my last one. You're going
that's
for
a good point. That's a good point. So I will say, let's see, my fifth favorite stretch. It's kind of dumb, but it's just forward fold. A good forward fold to stretch your hamstrings.
Oh, yeah.
It's basic, and it's also like the easiest to do because like I do that while I'm waiting for my coffee to warm up.
I know. I like
habit,
stick my leg up on the counter
and stretch. I have a habit of I wake up in the morning and I drink half a cup of coffee while I'm getting the kids ready, and then when they get on the bus, I go for a run, right? And I leave my cup of coffee just sitting on the bar, and then I'm going to drink it when I get back.
Cold coffee?
No, I warm it up in the microwave. So I put it in the microwave and I do my forward folds while I pet the dog who's happy I'm home. So I'm multitasking. I'm warming up my coffee, I'm stretching my hamstrings, and I'm petting the dog who's super happy I'm home. And like, stretch number one is over. So once you do that basic stretch, you can just roll through the rest of them.
Okay. So what's our favorite last one?
I would say it's like Shavasana, which is a yoga pose. It's the pose you do whenever you do yoga at the very end.
You're just asleep.
It's like it's called corpse pose. So you can leave. You just relax and you put your arms like out on your side, palms up.
I'd agree. That's my favorite.
You put your feet straight and you just relax them. And you kind of, if you're doing it well, like you kind of start at the top of your head and you kind of go through your body and make sure that everything is relaxed. Or you can do it with your hands, like one on top of the other on your stomach, and you just breathe. Like you take as deep a breath as you can for about a minute, or longer. But like that's kind of the best way. That's my favorite part of any yoga exercise. It's just kind of the end of it, and it's just super relaxing.
Yeah, that is a great one. But I think my actual favorite last one, I think I just remembered it because I do like to like the corpse pose, but I really like downward dog pedaling your legs.
Yeah, because you stretch out your calves. Yeah. And then sometimes you can kind of rotate your hips too.
Yeah, I really like that. Yeah. I like that better than corpse.
You say that.
I do, because I mean it.
You wanted to steal my favorite pose and then you rejected it.
I
don't know how I feel about that. It doesn't feel well. I feel rejected over here. All right, do we have any other, do we have a joke for today?
We do.
Of course we do.
Well, my mom called me the other day to tell me that she was a certified yoga instructor. And I thought that was a bit of a stretch.
Oh, good one. Oh, so I don't know why, but I thought you were going to tell a joke where it was like, hey, let's go over here. And you're like, namaste right here. Like namaste joke.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Sorry, everyone. I don't do jokes, actually.
I know. That was a good one, though.
All right. Thanks for tuning in to another great episode of the Healthiest Happy podcast. Stay tuned for more interesting episodes. And if you're watching this episode, you can also go to our website, basiclivingbr.com, and there will be a blog that will have some visuals and maybe even some videos to also go along with some of these stretching. And tip of the day is, absolutely. If you're listening to this, go and take 10 minutes to stretch right now. All right. Thanks, everybody.
You got nothing out of this. Just stretch.
Yeah. Do some stretching. Corpse pose.
Go to sleep.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Healthy is Happy podcast. You can follow us on Facebook at Basic Living BR, Instagram for all things healthy and happy living at Basic Living BR, and for more nutrition-focused content, follow us on Instagram at the_basic_eats.